You have a toilet that just keeps running or keeps refilling, and you hear it go on and off all throughout the day, especially at night when you're trying to sleep, and all of a sudden it turns back on and it starts filling. That's because this little flapper right here is leaking, most likely. So I'll show you guys how to replace that with this kit. It's really easy, it's simple. You can do it in about 15 or 20 minutes at most, but it's a really inexpensive thing you can do yourself. Save some money, don't waste water, and save your sanity. Be able to sleep at night, not hearing that thing refill over and over and over. Let me show you how easy it is. So we have, oh, there it goes. Right on cue. It's kind of funny it happened that way, but we have a toilet that keeps running, keeps refilling. You hear it during the night, you hear it during the day. Every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it seems like it refills. And that's because that little blue flapper in there, 3-inch flapper to be exact, is letting a little bit of water out. So the flapper is actually not creating a good seal, it's letting water go through, which makes this floater, which helps shut the water off, lower. As soon as the water level drops, that keeps refilling, this keeps leaking, and on and on. So not only are you wasting water, but it eventually becomes annoying hearing this thing go off during the night and during the day. So I'm gonna show you how we can replace this, get a new plunger set up, and actually what looks like to be a better plunger setup. First, shut off the water, drain the water, and then use a towel or something to help soak up the rest of that water in the bowl, because we're going to be removing those 2 bolts at the bottom. The nuts are actually underneath here. Little plastic nuts that you can actually undo by hand. Now we have all the water out of there. You can actually take off the water line. I like to have a towel nearby because there's going to be a little bit of water in this. Then we're going to remove these 2 bolts, these nuts. You're going to see the tank start to become loose because we've got to take this tank off. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. See the nut here, sorry, the bolt is loose. Got the washer off. We can actually pull the tank off. And just be careful, I'll set that same towel over the seat here, and then that way I can lay the tank safely on top of the toilet, and that's how we're gonna work on it. Another thing you can go ahead and do now is disconnect this chain from the flapper from your flush handle, because we're gonna be leaving this here, but we're just gonna be replacing this part of the valve and flapper, and then it's gonna have a new chain that connects here, so we can disconnect that now. When you lift up the tank, lift it straight up, and then I like to set it right on the towel on the seat. So I have the tank laying on the seat now, just so you can see underneath. These are the bolts that you're gonna have to be replacing. You wanna use new bolts with the kit because it comes with new washers. These little rubber things right here, how they're towards the back, they just stick because they will sit right here on the lip, because you don't want to have the porcelain squeezing against other porcelain. So these are here as little buffers. Make sure you don't lose these 2 things. And if your toilet doesn't have them, you know, it might be something to consider, but maybe that model doesn't need it. But all the toilets I've seen have had some type of bushings here, just to kind of make sure that your tank doesn't sit on something hard and crack. You're gonna have this seal right here we're gonna remove. It's a real soft rubber, you get a new one. So again, just use all the new parts. And then we got to get this big plastic nut off of here. And they do make special tools for it. They have some giant wrenches and different gadgets, but I didn't want to spend the extra money on that, so I'll kind of explain a way that I actually got this to loosen. You have to be really careful, but just kind of made it work. Did a little bit of MacGyvering, but I'll show you guys how I did it. So like I said, they make a special wrench that can actually fit over this. I've found that on a couple of these toilets, it's really, really tight, because there's a rubber bushing on the inside that this thing is squeezing against, because obviously it needs to be watertight. I couldn't get it by hand. I didn't want to buy that tool. So I took one of my screwdrivers, that's a flathead, and this is a rubber nut. So I knew that if I hit it at just an angle, basically kind of going along with the threads as if I was turning it, I could tap it, keep enough pressure on it, and I can kind of break it loose. Once you get it to start spinning, if I could show you guys. There you go. Just little taps. I could do the same thing right here. After a couple rotations, you can see it start to loosen up. I had to do it a couple more. Main thing is that you're driving this screwdriver as close to the angle of rotation as you can. It's starting to get there, it's almost there. Because this is a plastic nut, screwdriver digs into it just a little bit, and in the new kit you get a new nut for it, so I'm not worried about damaging this. And that's how it comes off. If you watch that whole thing, I applaud you. That was real time. So you can see here's the old valve. You can see that it doesn't really like to seal very well. You can see the light through there. I don't know how this thing ever did seal. It only started happening, maybe leaking water the last month or two, but maybe the rubber just got old enough. I know these things all need to be replaced at some point, but 2 to 3 years this thing lasts. It's maybe replaced with another $10 or $12 part. Took about 20 minutes. Definitely needed to be replaced. Really easy to do yourself, save some money, save having to have somebody come out here and do it for you. And then if anything ever happens again, you know what to do and how to fix it. And this is what we're going to be replacing it with. 3-inch flush valve kit. 3 inches referring to the size of that flapper. That's the main difference that you'll see in some of these kits, is just finding out what size flapper you have. 3 inches is probably one of the larger ones, so I knew right away that this was it because I had measured it already. But 3-inch flush valve kit, it shows you these are the parts that come in there. So in the new kit, it's flat. It has a better seal, I believe. That little white gasket right here sits along the lip. It's a really soft silicone feeling, so it should get sealed good. This is the gasket that's going to go on the inside of the tank. This is what used to be there on the old one. So this one should have really good compression. We have that new nut that's going to go on the outside of the tank that I just took off. And then I'll show you guys how I reinstall those bolts and how we put that tank back on. It's just that easy. We're going to put this on the inside, put that nut on the outside here and tighten it as tight as we can by hand. And then we're going to put those bolts back in and mount the tank. So this new kit comes with all new hardware, and it's always highly recommended to use new hardware, especially when you have the new gaskets. This is the old one. It had just the seal on the inside, and then this nut right here at the bottom actually was tightened on the back of the bottom of the tank, and that created downward pressure, which helped seal this inside the tank. But you had to really crank on this to make sure that this was tight. Sometimes you can crack a tank doing that, because it's pulling everything together to try to get this tight. On the new ones, they have this new gasket here. It's angled so it helps wedge. It has a little tiny gasket and a washer, and then you can tighten this whole section right here up to the tank. You can tighten that to the tank with this nut. It's already sealed. Then they have this at the bottom of the tank underneath, which goes through and attaches to the base. And then since this is already sealed and tightened and everything by hand, you only have to crank this one tight enough to actually tighten it to the base. So you're not relying on all the pressure down here to try to create a pressure seal up here. So again, this is just another upgrade. I think this is a lot better equipment than what came with the toilet. But I'm gonna take it one step further from this, and I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna take the brass screw, because it has a Phillips head or flat, and the new one is only flat. I don't like this, but I like the setup of this washer system here. And I like the rubber hand tight nuts here. I don't like having to have a crescent wrench or anything underneath the tank. It's a little bit harder, so I like doing this because you can really adjust it by hand and it's good. Has plastic that goes up against that porcelain when you're tightening it. This one doesn't come with a rubber gasket to go up against the porcelain on the bottom. So I don't like metal on porcelain. I like to do the plastic to it. So I'm kind of making a hybrid, and this is what I'm actually going to be installing. Again, I'm making sure I'm replacing all the gaskets, but I decided to go with using the original hardware as far as the bolt, because it's brass and it has that Phillips head. So kind of a hybrid here. I think this is overall going to be better. So your next step is to put that tank seal here. This is the big new rubber one that they'll give us. These are all pretty much the same, but it goes over that big plastic nut. You're gonna make sure it sits nice and tight, because this is eventually what your tank is gonna sit on. So now I have the nuts and bolts on. You can see I got the washers with the gaskets there. It's nice even pressure. You want to give them a, man, once they're snug or tight, maybe give them another half a turn or quarter turn. You don't want to tighten. You want raisins? Yeah. Raisins? Oh, you're eating raisins. Where'd you find those? He's my helper today. As I was saying, don't tighten them too much. You might crack the porcelain. Get them a little bit past snug. I would say firm, but it makes it easy when you have that washer and that gasket there, which the original hardware did not have. So got those tight. Now we can set the tank back on. Make sure that you have those two little black bushings on the back. So we're gonna go straight down over that hole with this new big black rubber gasket in the center, and then we'll hand tighten those plastic bushings, or the plastic nuts on the bottom, which attach it to the base. You can have that. So one of the important things here is when you're putting these on, you don't over tighten them, and then as you tighten them, you can hold that too, okay? You're gonna want to put them both on snug, and then you'll see as I tighten them. Can I talk real quick? Let me talk, okay? You're gonna tighten them both snug, and then you'll see as I tighten them, the tank will actually kind of rock. So again, not too tight. You can crack your tank if you over tighten these. But okay, you can have that one. But you just want to make sure that it sits nice and even. So I'll show you guys here. As I tighten these, you can see the tank actually kind of adjusting. You want it firm, you don't want to over tighten it. Now there's no more movement. It's not really sucking down or adjusting. I've tightened them even together, and now this is sitting pretty level. Next thing we're gonna do is hook the water back up, turn it back on, watch it fill, and then keep an eye out for some leaks to see if anything needs to be tightened before we walk away. So we have everything installed now. We have the new flapper there. I've reattached my chain. You want to make sure your chain has just a little bit of slack in it so it's not pulling on the plunger at all. You want to take this fill tube, you can stick it right here into the back. So this is just like a little overflow fill tube. It actually shoots water in there. It helps create some suction. When it fills up, You're gonna have that thing sitting there nice and flat. We can turn the water back on. This hasn't been changed, so it should have the same water level. Moment of truth. So we'll let this fill up. Everything's nice and snug. The rubber nuts in the bottom that attach to the base aren't over tightened. The tank is sitting nice and even. It's not wobbly, it's not rattling. So far it looks good. And we'll just keep an eye out the water where you've reattached the water line. Look here in between the tank and the base to see if any water builds up where those bolts go through. And then you can also see the seal on the inside there too. So I'll turn the flashlight on my camera, shine it in there, check it in a minute or two just to make sure it's not a slow leak. So overall, not too hard. If I wasn't filming, it probably would have taken me maybe 10 or 15 minutes. The parts, like I said, they cost about anywhere between $10 and $12. I think these were 11 and some change. I had to replace 2 of them. And then filming took me a little bit longer, but after doing it a couple times, it could go really easy. But this equipment is a lot better than the stuff it came with. I think it's gonna last longer. It already has a lot better seal, I can tell. And just the hardware that I put in was a lot better. So I'm happy with that. It was not too expensive. And it will also save money from wasting all that water. And hopefully it'll keep your sanity when you don't hear this thing refilling all day long. So I hope you guys liked that video. Hope you found it helpful. If you like it, hit that like button, maybe even hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned to all the other videos that I'll be making. I do a lot of stuff with electrical, drywall, framing, plumbing, whatever it may be that I'm doing around the house or projects that I have going on. So I'll be trying to film more of it, put it out there for you guys in case you have any questions or maybe you have the same problems that I have. A lot of it is basic maintenance around a house sometimes. So hope you guys like the video again, and stay tuned, subscribe. See you on the next build.